I'm making this recording because there's some things I want to remember. Related to things that I've been working on lately. And these are just some clips I've thrown together. On the one hand, there's some things that you remember easily, and there's other things that are hard to remember. Some things you can see over and over and over again, and then other things you can't. And then getting down to the nuts and bolts of how things actually work, how they move, how things are built, languages, buildings, how things are line up, how things are registered, the light of time, the light of space, connected, reflections. The things that we see, the things we don't see, the things that are hidden, our internal, love, lust, passion, enthusiasm. And it's like, maybe we don't, sometimes it's like we don't give a shit either way. And other times we care very deeply. And trying to figure out the way things really meet up. The whole root 2 incommensurability of root 2. And the way a circle's separated. The way a square's separated, the way a circle's separated. Like, whether you love it or hate it, it's a problem to be solved. And like, I think of the color wheel and like the way that's split up and how we have the Roy G. Biv thing, but yet, and Roy G. Biv includes indigo, which I guess in Russia is a big thing, but like in the US, like, we learn Roy G. Biv, but we also just learn of the, three complementary, 6 colors. And that's just so strange, and then the whole additive versus subtractive coloring of light versus pigments and so on. It's kind of infuriating. And it's infuriating always forgetting everything. I could forget what just happened. And I can remember things that never happened, as I've done quite a bit lately. But like, the way things meet up, the way one thing makes two things, and the way two things come together to make one thing in all kinds of crazy ways, and things can look all mixed up. Things can look all crazy. And yet there's something very definite happening. But then it comes back to the idea of definiteness, and how is definiteness really structured. And on our scale, we're so much larger, like we're more big than we are small, logarithmically, between between what we know of as the smallest popularly now and what we know of as the largest popularly now. We're the size of the universe, the size of the Planck constant. We're so much bigger. But then that would beg, do we have that scale correct? And of course there's structure beneath the Planck constant. Of course there is. There's structure all the way down. And how far down? I think it was, I read, and I didn't read it from Hegel, but I've read that Hegel identified good infinity and bad infinity. Good infinity being like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, blah, 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 forever. And that, good infinity would be separating something smaller and 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 smaller fractions. Fractions, which is division. So I guess in some sense, like, if we're to take a really limited view of infinity in general, then like good or bad infinity would be addition, and good infinity would be division. And in some sense that makes sense, as far as like, as far as like God separating himself, herself. I apologize. I am very influenced by the paradigm that I was raised in. And unfortunately, there's no like neuter pronoun without taking like the properness away from something. You can call something it, but it is rarely like a capital I it. Maybe that's something that should be introduced into the language. Or maybe we should just get rid of capital letters altogether. But they really do have a reason, a purpose, and a meaning, and I just haven't learned them yet. There's a lot I haven't learned. And then we get into the whole idea of like abstraction versus like, really getting your hands on things. And like, it seems so much knowledge, like so much knowledge is known by the mathematicians. I mean, the theologians, blah, 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 but mathematicians, philosophers, and so on. But like electrical engineers, there's just something about electrical engineers. Or I guess engineers in general, what's their mechanical, electrical, civil engineers. And of course, like my favorite, especially lately, has been Eric Dollard. And one of the things I always think about when I think of Eric Dollard is he quotes I can't remember now if it's Steinmetz or Heaviside. Let the plot, let the pot, let the pots blacken, he says, because there's work to be done. And I've literally, actually, figuratively, in every way, I've taken that advice. I have let my pots blacken. My stovetop practically looks like Hiroshima, which I guess is a kind of a bad joke, really. But like, we have all these like pressures in our life. We have all these things facing us. Pressure always makes me think of Cavalieri too, even though I don't know much about him. But like pressure, release, and it's like all these pressures of like things to learn, things to do. So many things to learn, but like ultimately you want to get to the basics of it. You want to get right back, you want to get to like Big Bang knowledge. What's going on at that point? You want to get to the knowledge of the ether. You want to get to the knowledge of like what's happening behind things. And like Eric Dollard's kind of big on that as far as like, I don't know the words used, but like the structure of the vacuum and the structure of the, like the real, the true vacuum. Like not only the vacuity of stuff in space, but like the vacuity of like no space itself or no time itself, or you know, like the mental ether, the matrix, the order of things as they are behind everything. And then, you know, the Matrix, you can't talk about the Matrix without talking about the movie The Matrix. I mean, it's just impossible at this point. And I always think of the end of the Matrix. Like, because there's the end, like the first movie of the Matrix obviously is like the best as far as a movie. Everybody knows that, but like the three are really fantastic. As far as like storytelling, all the technology, as far as like something to look at that time was amazing. But anyway, like at the very, very end of the movie, Neo, you know, at the end of the first movie, it was like he was in a Matrix. At the end of the first movie, he gets out of the Matrix and into the real world, and then like masters the Matrix. And then the point was so that he could master the real world. But then at the end of the real world, at the end of the third movie, he dies, and it creates a truce. Like basically his dying at the end of the third movie, like he dies, like so all that shit about him flying around at the end of the first movie, whatever, it's just, it don't matter. Boom, he's kaput, and he creates a truce so that all the shit that rules the world leaves Zion in the middle of the earth alone, so that they can go on. But like that's not the end. Like there needs to be more movies, because all the bad shit that's been happening keeps happening. It's just that the animatronic Matrix world decides, okay, it will leave Zion alone. But like there's all those people still in pods, like everything's still all fucked up. It's just there's this little seed, you know. And so like that's not like really the triumph. It's like that's the end of the old war. That's the end of the hot war and the beginning of the cold war. And that's where the movie leaves off. Like it's basically the beginning of the Cold War, because obviously Zion can't just stay sitting around doing nothing and being happy that they're being left alone. And it's kind of like how the, you know, I guess this is a connection with my life somehow. Like, I'm in a pre-Renaissance. I'm in a Cold War. And somehow, like, the Cold War and the pre-Renaissance are the same thing. And we're reaching the end of the Cold War pre-Renaissance of this age. You know, now, today. Like, we're entering a new phase, a new time. And we're going from the choice between the red and the blue pill into the choice of the purple pill. You know, all the resolution in the world won't do you any good if you don't know what you're looking at. And some purple is really small dots of blue and red, and some purple's purple, and they're different. And if we can't tell the difference, we're in trouble.
Screwing me up. What whole thing? Oh, nothing. Come on, have a cup of coffee. So, sometimes the best person to tell something to is a stranger. Carl, what's the line?
Okay. I run into this girl this morning. Never saw her before in my life. She kisses me and disappears.
So, what's so weird about that?
What's so weird about that is that 10 minutes later I see her picture on an album cover I'm supposed to paint. I mean, that's crazy, right?
Well, I said it sounded crazy, but you stopped looking for it?
No.
Why ask?
So I'll keep looking for her.
Okay, kid, but take a tip from me.
What's that?
Don't look under water.
Thanks a lot.